Military Unit 2305, also known as GROM, is Poland's elite counterterrorism unit, known to be among the absolute best there are. This unit is comprised of Patriots that will fight until the very end. Activated in 1990, the unit was headed by Lieutenant Colonel Slawomir Petelicki, who is known as Poland's James Bond and Rambo in one. GROM was modeled on the world's most highly regarded special ops units, such as the United States Navy SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, and the British SAS. Although Poland's GROM Special Forces unit was completely unknown to the world for years, they rose to fame in 1994 after a major operation in Haiti. GROM actively recruits new candidates to join their force, recruiting from active duty soldiers, reservists, and law enforcement. For those who are given the opportunity to join GROM, their entry does not come easy. Candidates must first pass the initial stage, where they are exposed to a series of painstakingly tough psychological and physical tests, and then demonstrate their survival skills in secluded mountain terrain, lasting a total of 3 days. After this initial phase comes what is known as the truth test, a mental endurance test known to be extremely psychologically exhausting, aimed at filtering out the weakest candidates. The physical tests are also extremely intense, with candidates being tested on their ability to scale ops, dive from towers, complete a 3,000-meter dash, and showcase their proficiency in martial arts. The very few that even pass these initial tests then move on to a week-long camp in rugged terrains, often at extreme altitudes, where they are again repeatedly tested physically and mentally, pushing them past the limits of what humans should even be capable of. The training for GROM candidates really only begins here though. Those who have passed the entry tests and the physical tests then begin their formal training, broken up into 3 categories. In these 3 categories, trainees undergo specialized training in frogman, parachuting, explosive training, sniping, and paramedical training. GROM soldiers also require numerous other qualifications, such as knowing and being proficient in a minimum of 2 foreign languages. This prestigious unit excels in combat, espionage, and sabotage on the structure that every soldier must be able to assume various responsibilities of any of their colleagues beside them in any given situation. The Indian Marcos, short for Marine Commandos, are the Special Forces unit of the Indian Navy, established in 1985. This unit focuses on conducting amphibious warfare, close corner combat, hostage rescue, and counter-terrorism. In the 3 decades of their existence, they've established themselves as being among the most elite special forces in the world, living up to their motto, the few, the fearless. The total duration to becoming a member of the Marcos unit generally takes 2.5 to 3 years of incredibly intensive training. The Marcos are selected entirely from the Indian Navy and are selected based on extremely high standards. The pre-training selection involves undergoing 3 days of physical fitness and aptitude testing. Within just this first phase, up to 80% of applicants are denied. For the 20% that do move on, they now enter a process known as Hell's Week. While actually taking a total of 5 weeks, Hell's Week involves extremely high levels of mental and physical endurance testing. Only after this does the actual Marcos training even begin, for the few that remain. Basic training takes 6 months, the first 2 of which are used primarily for even further weeding out of candidates. They then go on to specialize in warfare and intelligence gathering techniques, where every possible scenario of modern warfare is presented and trained for, including firing while standing, laying down, running at full sprint, and even running backwards while looking into a mirror. Various types of close combat are also trained, but a notoriously rigorous training program of the Marcos is the 800-meter death crawl through thigh-high mud while wearing 25 kilograms of gear. Then immediately afterwards having to complete a 2.5-kilometer obstacle course. After completing both, the exhausted and sleep-deprived men must now complete their final test, shooting a target 25 meters away while a partner stands next to the target. It is no wonder that the average dropout rate for the Marcos training camp is an estimated 90%. The Marcos are especially organized and are highly trained and equipped to operate in all types of terrain and have gained a worldwide reputation for absolute professionalism. Within the Russian Special Forces, Alpha Group is as badass as they come. An elite standalone subunit of Russia's Special Forces, this force was created by the Soviet KGB in 1974 as a response to the Black September attacks at the Munich Olympics of 1972. While initially called simply A, the unit has since adapted the name Alpha. They are known as one of the most vicious commando teams on the planet, and the Russian Alpha Group are also considered to be among the most effective and advanced special forces in the world, believed to be operating under the direct control of Russia's top political leadership. Coming to fame during the invasion of Afghanistan, during which members of Alpha stormed the presidential palace in Kabul and under strict orders killed every person in the building. This brutality led to a reputation, and living up to this, in 1985, Alpha was dispatched to Beirut to rescue 4 Soviet diplomats. When the diplomats were killed before they could be rescued, Alpha Group allegedly tracked the relatives of the hostage takers and returned them to their families in pieces, sending a gruesome message to future terrorists. Within Russia itself, Alpha has been involved in most of the major anti-terrorist and hostage operations, such as the Moscow theater siege of 2002 and the Beslan school siege of 2004. Both events only further demonstrated the force of the Russian Special Forces as numerous hostages were killed. The selection process for Alpha is one to ensure only the best and the most elite of their respective department is chosen. Alpha holds the power to select a candidate from any department, including the police, army, and even other existing special forces units. Candidates must undergo an entire year of extremely intensive physical and mental training. Those who pass then move on to an even more intensive 3-year training. The early stages of basic training include having to pass strenuous levels of infantry training, parachuting, diving, sniper operations, practical shooting, martial arts, and having to learn a foreign language. Upon the completion of all these levels, they are then trained in anti-terrorism techniques and hostage operations. Only then are they now recognized as ranking members of Alpha, who follow a motto of "where Alpha appears, compromise stops." Today's media and Hollywood blockbusters have given much, likely very unwelcome popularity to the United States Navy SEALs, specifically Dev GRU, or Team 6, who notoriously killed Osama bin Laden in 2011. However, it is the US 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta who make this list of the most elite. The US SFOD-D, more commonly known simply as Delta Force, are the most secretive Special Forces unit in the United States and likely in the world. Delta Force owes its existence to Colonel Charles Alvin Beckwith, who, after returning from the Vietnam War, petitioned to the United States military to create an elite Special Forces unit for the United States Army. He went on to, in 1977, form Delta Force, modeled directly on training and selection practices he had previously learned while fighting alongside the British SAS. Composed primarily of United States Army Rangers and Green Beret, Delta Force recruits from a broad spectrum of soldiers in all branches of the United States military. Unlike the requirements in other levels of the US military, those who make up Delta Force are handpicked for being the most elite among their units, commonly again from the Green Beret and Rangers, who along with a list of numerous requirements must already rank as sergeants. Those who are chosen are brought to a camp where they must then pass an intense test of physical training, including swimming, running, and a barrage of push-ups and sit-ups over the course of a week. This is all to ensure that those who continue from here on are all at an even level of physical capabilities. The remaining candidates are then sent to another camp where they will endure a month of grueling physical and psychological testing and training modeled again after the British SAS. Before the final phase, already only about 20% of the initial candidates remain. The final phase, though, includes a 40-kilometer march through the Appalachian Mountains to be done in just 2 days. Already sleep deprived, upon returning, the men must then read and write a detailed essay to test their mental abilities when already extremely exhausted. This finally leads to a final interview and a vote on whether to allow the candidate or not. Those who pass are sent to a 6 months operators training course, and at this stage, the absolute most elite of the elite of the elite are finally badged. An average of just 10 for every 100 already highly ranking military sergeants move on to this 6 months OTC training. Members of Delta Force are operators who work for whoever calls upon them, whether it be the Army, the FBI, and even the CIA. Not formally acknowledged by the United States Army or even the United States government, they are a unit all of their own, and they are extremely secretive. It is tough to imagine any other elite special forces unit that can quite match up like the British Special Air Service, also known as the British SAS. Created in 1941, the force was built to operate behind German and Italian lines and to support resistance movements against occupying forces during the Second World War. This SAS force of the Second World War is described as being borderline psychotic, both in their practices and in their training. The training and physical requirements to becoming a British SAS today continue to remain extremely harsh, so harsh in fact that it has led to deaths even recently. Among the various training procedures is a 40-mile march with full gear that must be completed within 20 allotted hours. Applicants must also be able to swim a full 2 miles in just an hour and a half and be able to run 4 miles in just 30 minutes. If you do meet these physical requirements, applicants are sent typically to Belize or Malaysia. Applicants are then trained in navigational and jungle survival skills. While there are numerous phases to becoming an SAS British Forces member, the final test is a grueling 36-hour-long interrogation session aimed at mentally and physically breaking down the candidates. With these extreme training requirements, it is no surprise that applicants who, remind you, are already active and experienced combat troops have an extreme difficulty of passing. In fact, of 100 applicants, an average of just 15 pass, yet they still aren't done. The small handful of people that are accepted are then transferred to an operations force for further training, often by MI5 and MI6 security and intelligence agencies for espionage operations. This seemingly never-ending process ensures that the SAS are made up of the very best that the British military has to offer. A story from the 1980s claims that of 180 men that applied that year, only one sole trainee was badged. The SAS are among the most elite in the world, and many special forces units around the world are directly modeled after the SAS, often even training alongside them today.